So we're talking about generosity and all the money things that nobody really wants to talk about. But to follow Jesus means that we yield our lives to him. And so we want to talk about what it means to yield not just, again, our theology, but also our budgets. And so part of what we like to do when we share kind of these practices is hear from people in our congregation who are engaging with this. That way it's easy for me and Pastor Trey to tell you should do this, but it's another thing for someone in the church to say, we've done this, and here's how God has kind of shown up in our lives. And so I'm going to invite Mike and Grace up to the stage. Yeah, let's honor them. Mike and Grace have been a part of our church for just a little over a year now, and you guys came in generous already, so this is not, I don't want to say it's not a hard practice for you, but it's maybe something that came a little more naturally to you guys, and just the way that you've leaned in, not just with generosity, but to the vision of our church and how you've kind of engaged. I mean, you guys went through the backlog of our old practices and you kind of caught up on what you had missed, and your willingness to join a group, to lead and host a group right from the get-go. I just want to honor you guys for taking those steps. Thank you for being a part of our church. We're so grateful for you guys, but also I wanted you to share your story a little bit, because as we're talking about generosity and kind of wrestling with some of these ideas of what it means to really like trust God and be generous with our money, that's a huge part of your guys' story. And I'd love for you to just kind of share what you've learned and how God has moved through your lives as you've practiced generosity.
Okay, Grace and I are from Northern Nevada. We moved here 5 years ago. We've been a member of this church for about a year. So this story starts, my story. This is two separate stories before we knew each other. We attended the same church but didn't know each other. Go back to 2009-10. The housing bubble had burst. The economy was in tatters. I worked for a heavy equipment company. Construction came to a screeching halt. Times were tight. And I personally was in personal financial dire straits, needed to raise some dough. I decided I needed to start getting rid of some stuff, starting with 2 motorcycles. Why I was in tough financial straits? Right, one of them's a Harley. Of course, nobody's buying motorcycles because nobody has any money. So I advertised them. Nothing. Couldn't get rid of these things. At the time, we both attended the same church, and the pastor of that church, we had become pretty good friends, and we're having lunch one day, and I'm kind of crying the blues to him, and I said, things are pretty tough, and I said, I'm giving to the church, but I'm not really tithing. And he goes, why not? And I'm like, dude, didn't you hear me? What up? He said, do you trust God? And I thought about it for a second, and I went, yeah, I think so. And he goes, then test him. And that was that. So I went home and I thought about it, and for the first time in my life that week, I truly tithed, and it wasn't easy. And I dropped the check in the thing. 1 week later, some guy called me up about my Harley, came over, rode it around, and bought it. 4 days later, some guy called me up about the other one, came over and bought it. So this gave me some breathing room, but didn't solve all my woes. They were, Anyway, during this time, I had been in talks with a company in Salt Lake City about going to work for them, but I would have had to have moved, and I didn't want to do that. And 2 months later, they called me up and said, hey, we're taking over the line of equipment you work on from your current employer in 30 days. You want to work for us now at a 33% pay increase? Yes, please. This was God working in my life. No doubt about it. I trusted him. I really trusted him. And this is how we respond. So now, to you.
So, same time frame, still didn't know him. 2009, I was a single parent, paycheck to paycheck, struggled. I was working for a startup company that was struggling. Paychecks were sporadic, didn't know when I was going to get paid, didn't know any of that. Well, one day I was in church, and I wasn't giving, I wasn't tithing, I wasn't any of that. And I saw the offering bucket come through, the little panic of, what am I going to do? And I had $5 to my name. That was it. And God reminded me my car payment, or my gas in my car, rent was paid, I had food in the cupboard, and I had $5. And God said, if I can trust you with little, I can trust you with much. and I wanted to be trustworthy, and that was what started it. And I came by, I dropped that $5 in, and the next day I get a phone call from my school that I was going to school at the time, that there was an error on my student loan, and I would be getting $800 within 2 weeks. It was in my account the next day, and that changed my whole thinking on tithing, on who God is in giving. So the next week I started tithing. I gave a little at a time. It was, like Mike said, it's tough to just go, ooh, am I really going to trust God? And I net tithed $50.22 or whatever it was, and then gross tithing, and then started rounding up. And then I realized you can't outgive God. And then that company eventually closed, and I was unemployed for 3 weeks when no one was hiring at that time, and went into a totally different career field, all of that. And it was a game changer for my life with God, which has allowed us to be more generous, which has allowed all of that. And it wasn't an easy process. It wasn't an overnight, hit the lottery, that's it. It was building my trust with God, Him trusting me. And now when we give first fruits. That's what we do. And that's the one area that we have never had an argument or anything in our relationship is money, because it's not our money, it's God's money, and we are just stewards of it. Did I miss anything?
Not a thing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, why don't we give them a hand?